All right, here we go. Gonna make some chocolate chip cookies. Okay, let's do this. All right, in the machine right now, I have 1 3/4 sticks of butter. And what you want to do is you want to cream it until it's light. You don't want to whip it. You just want to lighten it up. Cream it. Okay, to that, I just added a 1/2 cup of white sugar. Now, listen, I didn't have any brown sugar. So what I did was I added some molasses to regular white sugar, and this is it. That's what happens. I mean, that's what brown sugar is, molasses and sugar. So anyway, I made my own brown sugar. All right, so that was a 1/2 cup of white sugar and 3/4 of a cup of dark brown sugar. And here is 1 egg at room temperature and 1 egg yolk also at room temperature. Also, the butter is at room temperature. When you're whipping the butter, don't use cold butter. Use room temperature. Okay, so we've got the butter, the sugar, and the eggs, and they're all whipping, whip it good. All right. Now, also, in the butter, I also have 1 tablespoon of vanilla. Okay, now here comes the walnuts, which is 3/4 of a cup. Flour, 1 3/4 of a cup. And to the flour, I added 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda and 1 teaspoon of salt. That's already in the flour. The reason why you add all that stuff together is because you don't want to overmix cookies. That's the big no-no for making cookies and brownies. You don't want to overmix it. As soon as it's incorporated, that's it. Stop. The reason is because you don't want to build up any gluten in the batter. The gluten is built up when the batter mixes. The longer it mixes, the more gluten is going to be developed in the flour or from the flour. Gluten is a protein that the more you beat the flour, the more gluten builds up. And that's exactly what you don't want in cookies. That's exactly what you do want in bread. Gluten gives the bread the elasticity that it needs so that the bubbles are nice and small in the bread. But with cookies and brownies, you do not want any gluten. The same thing goes for pie dough or biscuits, stuff that you want to, it's called a shortbread. Anything you want to crumble, you don't want to mix heavily because of the gluten. A biscuit is a shortbread. Cookies are shortbread. What that means is that when they crumble, their pieces are very short. They're little pieces. So that's what happens. When you don't have a lot of gluten, you'll end up with a lot of short pieces. So in other words, when the cookie crumbles, it crumbles into small pieces. It's not, big chunks. Okay, let me read the recipe to you one more time. It's 1 3/4 cups of all-purpose flour. To that, you add a 1/2 of a teaspoon of baking soda and 1 teaspoon of salt. Then you need 1 3/4 sticks of butter. That's 7 ounces of butter. Okay, then you need a 1/2 cup of white sugar and 3/4 cup of dark brown sugar. Then to the butter you add 1 tablespoon of vanilla. All right, then you have 1 egg yolk and 1 egg. And then the chocolate chips. The chocolate chips vary. You can do whatever you want with chocolate chips. You can use milk chocolate, dark chocolate, peanut butter. You can use white chocolate. You can use all 4 of those. I like to make it with with dark chocolate, milk chocolate, and white chocolate chips, but I didn't have any white chocolate chips here, so I didn't use them. But anyway, that's 1.5 cups of chocolate chips and 3/4 cups of walnuts. Now, if you notice, coming up here somewhere at the end, what I did was I put some toasted coconut on top of the cookies. Okay, first of all, this recipe makes 2 dozen cookies this size. So what I like to do is I like to experiment with some of the cookies that I make. In other words, I know what the chocolate chip cookies are going to taste like. I know that. So for the first dozen, I left them normal. For the second dozen, I put some toasted coconut on top. Here it comes here. There we go. And, you know, just to try something a little different, you know. I always try to do that when you're making cookies. Well, except for like the Swedish butter cookies. Them things, they can't be improved. They're so good. That's it. I mean, there's no... I wouldn't mess around with the Swedish butter cookies. They're just too damn good, man. Just leave those alone. But like I say, you know, you try different stuff with the chocolate chips. All right, we're coming up to the end here. I'll read the recipe one more time. It's 1 3/4 cup of all-purpose flour. To that, add a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda and 1 teaspoon of salt. Then 1 3/4 sticks of butter, room temperature, and to that add 1 tablespoon of vanilla. Then a 1/2 cup of sugar, 3/4 cups of brown sugar, 1 egg yolk, 1.5 cups of chocolate chips, and 3/4 cups of walnut. Oh, and by the way, it doesn't get any better than this right here. Okay, see ya. I'm going to eat.